We will now move over to our next keynote speaker, who will, on behalf of the European Commission, introduce us more closely to the mission of the European Year of the Skills. With us today via video is Mr. Georgi Dimitrov, Head of Education Unit at European Commission's Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, and his keynote, Enabling Digital Education and Providing Digital Skills. So welcome, Mr. Dimitrov.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the introduction. Dobro jutro to all the Croatian friends and partners over there. Thanks also to the previous speaker for setting nicely the scene with some figures and data. And last but certainly not least, thank you very much to the all digital community for inviting me and for having me today. As you would know, especially those of you who are within the whole digital community, and that's probably plenty, we have been working for quite some time in the last years. And I have seen your organization evolve. I have seen it evolve in name, in brand. I have seen it expanding its current nature, as well as the community behind it. It has been growing quite organically, which is great. And I think all of this just shows how important the role of digital education and skills, of course, are, which I represent. I think that you on your side probably have seen how the work of the European Commission is also evolving, and in particular the Digital Education Action Plan that some of you may be familiar with.
Mr. Dimitrov, if I could just say something in the meantime, we don't see the video of you at the moment, since you probably will have some presentation, so we're having an audio, just the sound. If someone from the production could help us with that. Sorry.
Thank you. I actually do not have any presentation, but okay. In principle, you should see a picture of me, I guess.
We don't have it, but if you don't have any, now I see you on the screen, but we'll probably now see you also okay. On the wall. Okay, well, so you can just carry on and we'll have a podcast. So we're listening to you. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you so much for your flexibility and agility. Let's make it work and then let's see what happens. Also, the tech team probably will try to help us. My camera for sure is on. The vision for digital education at the European level is set by the European Digital Education Action Plan. And this vision can be summarized with two words. Effectively, this is about high quality and it's about inclusiveness. And I think that these two concepts are very much linked to each other. There is no point in having a digital education system for a limited number of learners. And that's a very important point. And on the other side, there is no point in having a digital transformation that leads to poorer or not so good results. So these are two very important points which guide us in the work. And we have started the implementation of this action plan already in January 2021. And I can tell you that in hindsight now, 2.5 years later, we see how slowly but gradually this ambition starts to realize in results. And I want to pick up one example here in order to make it a little bit more concrete. Now, I will assume that you will know that the European Commission and the, let's say, European competences more generally are very limited in the field of education. And this is to say, with other words, that it is really the member states and sometimes even a level below the member states for federal republics, if you think of, there are a couple of those, that are responsible for education and training. Nevertheless, I think that digital education and skills as a policy area has been never as important politically at the EU level, and partially for the reasons which, in fact, the speaker before me outlined very nicely, with the challenges related to the digital transformation, with the AI, with the demographics, and so on and so forth. And I want to mention an example of the Digital Education Action Plan that we organized last year, which shows the level of commitment and importance that this has gained by now. And I'm referring to the structured dialogue which the European Commission organized with all 27 member states last year on digital education and skills. These are bilaterals which we run with each and every member state. So you can count, these are 27 of those. And what is interesting is that this type of bilateral discussions involved what I will call a whole of government approach. And this whole of government approach means essentially that not only the education ministries or the education and training ministries were involved, but in fact, all these different departments which are part of the digital transformation of education. And these are Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Social Affairs, but also in some member states, there is infrastructure ministries, as well as the finance one. And this is a really important point because often the education ministries are not necessarily sitting on the highest leverage, if you like, when it comes to the distribution of resources and priorities within governments. And so it is very, very important that education ministries are not only supported by the others, but are actually put in the position to, in fact, even lead or to be empowered. So very important lesson learned from this exercise is that it is not sufficient also to have only the whole of government approach, but you need to have the private sector, civil society, as well as the social partners, because the challenges which are related to digital transformation in education and training are just way too massive to be dealt with by governments alone. After these 27 bilaterals, as it were, last year, which you can imagine is a very intensive process, the European Commission came with two specific proposals, which I have reflected in the title of the talk today. We have made two specific proposals for Council recommendations. On the one side, on the key enabling factors of digital education, and on the other, on improving the provision of digital skills. And I will say a word on both of it in turn. First of all, when it comes to the enablers of digital education, we see there three main areas of concern, of shared concern, if you like, where most member states, if not all, have very similar issues. And they are, first, infrastructure and equipment, second, content, tools and platforms, and third, human capacity, in particular, the question of teachers. In the backdrop of the COVID pandemic, there have been very large investments in infrastructure, connectivity, and equipment in the member states, and they have been prioritized in the recovery and resilience plans of the member states. So just to give you a figure, member states have allocated almost 1/4 of the entire budget of the resilience and recovery plans to digital transformation. Almost 130 billion is the number, and out of this, more than 10% is devoted to connectivity, and almost 20% is going to digital skills and education development. So the numbers are anything if not massive, but there is a big question with regard to what are the outcomes and impacts of this type of efforts and investment. And here, I think it is very fair to say that it is not only the speed of change which matters, because in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, the European Union and the member states reacted very, very fast, also with the investments which I have mentioned. But sometimes the bigger problem is that it is not sufficient to keep up with the change in terms of speed. It is also very important to ensure equity, meaning that everyone should have equal access. And I think there we can have a lot more homework. And I just want to give you a number here to put it in perspective. Earlier this year, the European Court of Auditors, which essentially scrutinizes all the cost expenditures at the European level looked at digital education in schools. It looked at 6 member states, and in particular how they equip their schools with connectivity. And what it found is that in those 6 member states, of which there is a nice diversity in terms of geography and size, it found that only between 2 and 15% of the schools, in fact, used gigabit broadband connections and were able to make meaningful use of digital technologies. Another example where the let's say the cost of and capacity of computing is very important is generative AI. And all of this is just to say that unless the foundations are available in terms of infrastructure, in terms of access, in terms of equipment, no meaningful digital education can take place. And also this goes for the digital skills development. So certain things need to be prioritized for, of course, the member states, they need them. And here I want to mention what we have proposed to the member states when it comes to the enablers. First of all, many member states do lack a systemic approach to digital education and skills, and they face challenges to coordinate effectively across the different sectors of the society. So we recommend that the member states develop a more coherent and intertwined, if you like, a strategic approach on digital education and skills that brings the different partners together. Second point is that such a strategic approach sometimes exists, absolutely, in many member states, but sometimes it is not sufficiently effective because not all of the, let's say, government sectors participate effectively and cooperate effectively. And this is why we recommend a more structural involvement and continuous exchange with technology providers, with public-private partnerships where this is relevant, of course, in order to have the wider ecosystem involved. Strategy and recommendation are great, but they are not sufficient without the right skills on the ground. And this is why the third very important message we put forward in this recommendation is that all teachers need to go through a digital upskilling and do so on perhaps a continuous basis because of the very fast, let's say, pace of change. And the previous speaker referred to the AI development. You can imagine that these are the kind of questions that pupils sometimes would ask their teachers. And the question is, would they be able to support them? So it is very, very important to think about the teachers as an absolutely essential and critical success factor. Unless they are on board and fully equipped, all of these investments and resources would perhaps not be sufficient in order to get to where we want to be. And finally, it is really, really important to pay attention to the basics. Often things like infrastructure and connectivity are considered a little bit more boring, but the fact of the matter is that unless they are in place, essentially nothing else can work and can be built on. So that's why it is very important to move beyond the current situation where we have more or less one only out of 5 schools in Europe which have an internet speed above 100 megabit per second. And I mean, every one of you who has a smartphone there with 5G has a faster connection. So I think that's something that needs to give us a little bit food for thought. Now, digital education and enabling digital education is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is to use this to the ultimate objective, which is to develop digital skills. And I think we are coming now to the core of the matter, also of the topic today. This is where our second recommendation comes into place. This is the recommendation on improving the provision of digital skills. And we have also, of course, tabled this recommendation in the context of the European Year of Skills. And also we consider this a very, very important message in terms of the overall acceptance that digital skills are as essential and as important, just like numeracy and literacy. So they should be really considered a basic skill and not something, if you like, on the top, which comes later on and can be perhaps optional or so on. And we have put forward in the recommendation an approach which is meant to support the member states in the development of digital skills at all levels of education and training. And this is important also because it really is about protecting even the basic human rights and the digital rights of people, including the right to access information, but also their right to develop basic or advanced digital skills. And all of this is embedded in the overall targets of the European Union that I think you probably are familiar with. Let me just mention that and recall that today we have only 54% of the European citizens that have basic digital skills. We have more than 1/3 of the European workers who lack digital skills. And we don't have also enough ICT specialists. In fact, we are halfway from achieving our target, so we need to double the numbers in order to get to the 2030 targets. And this does not concern only adults. There is also this myth that there are digital natives and the younger population are somehow fluent. And I think that the data shows that this is more than a, let's say, questionable proposition, because as we see from ICEUs, for example, also young people do not perform particularly well, with 1/3 of students of 15 years of age underachieving on digital skills. So on all of this, we do have European targets, and we are putting this recommendation in order to support the achievement of those targets in a more effective way. What is it that we are proposing to the member states? First, to start early with the development of digital skills. And this is where early childhood education and care is very important in providing children and parents with appropriate guidance as soon as they need it, but favoring an age-appropriate approach, also unplugged digital activities and play-based learning activities. So you don't need to be in front of a screen to develop basic digital skills and things which are related to the computational thinking and logic. And this is very, very important, in particular for younger children. Second, we suggest ways to strengthen the provision of digital skills in schools, in universities and beyond, as I mentioned, at every level of education and training. And this is both for general digital skills, but also for specialized. And why is that important in terms of the education institutions? Well, think about universities. Nowadays, digital skills are mostly developed in higher education in a very specialized format. Take, for example, the computer scientist, or take the engineer. These are fairly vertical specialists. And we see that these are great, but they are not sufficient in terms of the needs of the labor market. So we need a much more horizontal approach there. Why not think about a student which does an archaeology degree or an English degree or a Croatian language degree in their first bachelor and put a master's of data literacy on top of it? There are great combinations and creative solutions that can emerge out of this and can help also in terms of employability. So we really need to support universities in order to make these more general digital skills provision offers available, because they are needed. And we know that from the labor market and from the data we get. And finally, and I would almost finish there, it is really important to think about how we can enable a broad-based understanding, a scientific understanding of the digital world in education and training. And this can happen, for example, through the provision of informatics as part of what is taught in schools. Why is that important? Because informatics or computer science essentially provides us with understanding the laws of the digital world in a similar way that we understand gravity from physics, or some specific chemical reactions in chemistry. There are digital laws, and a scientific understanding about them is really, really necessary in order to not stay at the application level, which is not sufficient in order to understand some of the biggest phenomena going on, if you think about algorithms or if you think about AI and so on and so forth. This is something where member states are already very active and where they are doing a lot of reforms. And what we are suggesting is that we do it in a slightly more coherent way. We enable exchange of best practice, and then we move also on this forward. I want to finish by mentioning that, in fact, some of these recommendations that I just outlined are relatively ambitious. I am not sure if they sound to you like this. Maybe it's only quite literal what I'm saying, that if you still hear only the sound of it. But given that the situation in the European Union is one of subsidiarity and of very limited competences, some of those recommendations are very ambitious. And the reason why I'm not with you today is because later today, as of the afternoon, I'm going to the other side of the street here to the Council, where we're going to discuss our two recommendations with the 27 member states. And we're going to discuss some of these topics in a very, very specific and concrete manner. And what the Commission is saying there is that we want the member states to advance on a couple of key strategic topics where we believe European added value is given. I have outlined some of these examples. On the rest, the member states, of course, are the drivers of their education agendas. This is not something that is somehow synchronized at the European level, but there is a certain case when it comes to digital policies, and here notably digital education and training policies, where better and more effective coordination at the EU level can only help us, because frankly, many of the challenges we have are very, very similar, independently whether you're in Brussels or in Zagreb or somewhere further up north. So we hope that those two recommendations that I outlined will be adopted by the end of the year. And we will then roll sort of our sleeves and start to work together. But until then, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And we need your support also, because you're a very vocal, active, and vibrant community. And I count on you, just like I have seen you in the past. I count on your support going forward. With this, I thank you for your attention. Sorry for the hiccups with the technical part, and I wish you a successful conference. Thank you.